All right, now we're on the radio. Hey, Tom.
How you doing, Scott?
I'm doing great. Welcome to the show.
Glad to talk to you.
Yeah, well, hey, same here. Let me tell people about your website. It's tomwoods.com. And if they go to tomwoods.com, the first thing they will note, I think they should, if they ask me, my opinion, is the awesome list of books that you've written, including Who Killed the Constitution. That one is co-authored with Kevin Gutzman, right? And then there's We Who Dared Say No to War, which you co-edited with Murray Polner. Rollback. And there's Meltdown, Why the Economic Crisis is All the Government's Fault. Now, this is no apology for corrupt Wall Street bankers who swindled everybody out of everything or anything like that. It's just really explaining that government, rather than the stern regulator that tried real hard to keep them from doing so but somehow failed, is actually the at least the guy driving the getaway car, if not the organizer of the whole plot. And so now you've made a movie about the book. And the movie is called The Bubble. And the movie features a lot of people who got it right during the so-called good times, when virtually everyone else, certainly all the masters of the universe up there, got it wrong. And so my first question for you then is, when does this movie come out? I want to see it.
We are aiming at October, certainly sometime this fall. And you're right. The idea is that we're going to do what really hasn't been done up to now, which is to talk to the people who've had this thing figured out at a time when you were considered a crank for saying that there might be something wrong with the George W. Bush economy. And so we've got a lot of names that will be familiar to the listeners of this program, and not just Peter Schiff, but also Jim Grant, Jim Rogers, the great investor, Doug Casey, who is just such a great iconoclast as it's impossible not to love this guy. We got a bunch of professors associated with the Mises Institute, and just one name after the other, plus, of course, Ron Paul. And what we've done is we've actually, even before the movie comes out, we put up all the raw interviews with all these people, and obviously we draw from that, and we make a movie out of it by snipping and whatever. But you can see the raw footage of all the interviews we did with Ron Paul, with Peter Schiff, with all these people at our website, which is thebubblefilm.com.
Thebubblefilm.com. All right. You know who, well, look, here's the thing. You know me as an economist. I'm really pretty good on foreign policy, but I'm not much of an economist. But I was always good on the bubble, mostly because of Ron Paul, ever since the 1990s during the dot-com bubble, and especially living in Austin, it was pretty hard to ignore how it was all just free money was propping the whole thing up during all that. But then I was good on the housing bubble all along, again, mostly because of Ron Paul, but also because of Jim Bovard. And he never gets any credit. But in his book, The Bush Betrayal, he has a whole thing about all these policies making sure that people who in the marketplace could never get a home loan is making it where all these houses seem like they're worth more, and it's propping up a bubble, and that only encourages more people to get involved, and the crooks on Wall Street to come up with more of these half-baked schemes for getting rid of the mortgage debt before it implodes, and the whole thing's in there, man. He did a great job on that.
Yeah, you can always rely on him to come up with, to find stuff that you didn't know about, that you thought you knew all the terrible things about these various presidents. Like,
right.
He did a book on Bill Clinton, for example. You think, I know all about Bill Clinton. Turns out you don't, actually.
Right.
So he always finds stuff.
Yep.
So, yeah,
all right, hold it right there, Tom.
That.
I'm sorry. We'll be right back. We'll talk more about how much we like Jim Bovard, too, after this. It's Tom Woods, everybody. All right, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Scott Horton. ScottHorton.org is the website. And I'm talking with Tom Woods. TomWoods.com is his website. Wish I had ScottHorton.com. Wouldn't that be great? It's not for sale.
Is that because of the other Scott Horton?
No, it's actually third, fourth Scott Horton out there. There's Scott Horton, the pro BMX biker, and there's Scott Horton, the wheelchair skater, and there's Scott Horton, of course, the anti-torture human rights lawyer from Harper's.
Well, the only other Tom Woods I came across years ago was that I was reading a pamphlet on gun rights or something, and there was a photograph of Tom Woods, pistol champion.
Ah, there you go.
And I thought, hey, I'd love to be confused with this guy.
Yeah, apparently there's Tom Woods, the drive shafts.
Tom Woods drive shaft.
Yeah, and then, but this Scott Horton is a newspaper man from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he bought ScottHorton.com in 1995 or something, and .net too, and he's not selling them to me.
No, that's too bad. That's Well, here's my little strategy. If you ever are negotiating for a domain name with your personal name in it, don't do the negotiating yourself. Have your friend who isn't named Scott Horton or isn't named Tom Woods do the negotiating. So when I was getting TomWoods.com initially, that guy wanted $2,000. And I said, well, what, are you crazy? There's no way. So we waited a few months. I had my friend Chris Bruner approach him. Now, his name is Chris Bruner. Mm-hmm. So he said, so he got him down to $1,000. And I thought, actually, over the long haul, that probably is worth it to me. So I saved 50% that way.
There you go.
Yeah. Doesn't help you any, but maybe somebody out there.
Yeah. Mine's a special occasion, I guess. Anyway, special situation.
Well, there are too many great Scott Hortons, apparently.
Yeah, Scott Horton is the name for a lot of great people. What's
Listen,
funny about me and the other Scott Horton, the guy at Harper's, because we talk about a lot of the same things, and he has a pretty libertarian, Miesian type bent. He's not as hardcore ideological as me, but he is a capitalist that way.
But good thing that it's not like Secretary of State Scott Horton.
Right,
yeah.
Well, we both go by our middle name, so neither of us can just start, add an initial in there. And nobody wants to put an initial before their middle name, because then you sound like you're in the theater or something like that. Yeah, right. So that's not going to fly. So we just have to be,
Got to do what you got to do. You got to deal with it.
I always get credit for being him, and he always gets blamed for being me. But that's the way it goes.
I'm sure that's how Tom Woods, pistol champion, feels sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I can't believe what you said.
This guy is killing me here. Now he's got this movie coming out. It's getting even worse.
All right, so it's the show. I'm Scott Horton. I'm talking with Tom Woods, and he wrote this book called Meltdown, and I think it's just great. It came out with the very beginning of 2009 or something, explaining what just happened with this stock market collapse, and why it would be a bad idea to let the Democrats and Republicans do the things that they all have this big consensus that they want to do, which is more of the same, of course. And so now they've made a movie out of it. It's called The Bubble. And really, I could see why Bovart's not in it, because he's a journalist. He's a libertarian, but primarily he's a journalist. And, I mean, he could have fit in here maybe somewhere, but this is mostly the Austrian academics and the investors, the Peter Schiffs and the Jim Rogerses, the people who, have money to show for how right they are about stuff all the time.
Yeah, I mean, of course there are, hundreds or thousands of libertarians who could be in this thing. But the point of the movie is not just that libertarians are awesome. That's another movie. We got a lot of movies up our sleeve, I'm sure, but these are actual people who have a track record, who wrote about this and who warned X is going to happen if you do Y. And then X in fact happened. And yet hardly anyone is listening to them. They'll listen to Paul Krugman or any of these other people. So, and plus, it so happens just by fortunate happenstance that a lot of these people are just great on camera. I mean, Peter Schiff is hysterical. Doug Casey is just devastating. Jim Grant is so funny. I mean, he testified on Ron Paul's monetary hearing, one of those committee meetings not too long ago, and his opening statement was just absolutely brilliant, funny, clever, totally absorbing. He needs to be doing a whole lot more of this. He needs to be much better known. Jim Rogers is the sort of guy who, if he's being interviewed on CNBC and somebody says something he thinks is not particularly informed, he'll say, even if it's the host, he'll say, "What's the matter with you? You don't even know how to read a balance sheet?" I mean, he does not suffer fools gladly. So this makes for good movie raw material.
Yeah, for sure. And now, you know what? And too often we know we're preaching to the choir, but we need to broaden this thing. There are a lot of people who don't know why in the world anybody should care about any of this. But so my thing about that is this. The monetary policy, which is such a boring term, but means the way the government goes about doing the currency around here, broadly speaking. It's the biggest scam ever. It's the thing that's wrong with everything. It's the reason that everything you hate gets funded. It's what's wrong with the world. Central banking.
Well, we're trying to make this should be interesting. And in fact, it's gotten interesting enough that a couple years ago, an article in Forbes said the Fed needs to become boring again. And the article was basically saying that we can't have all these uppity peons having an opinion on the Federal Reserve, and the Fed is drawing attention to itself with all the things it's doing. It better get boring again fast, or we're going to be in some trouble. So we are talking about this, and we are pinning the Fed not just to this current crisis, but to a whole bunch of others. We talk about the Great Depression in here. We talk about other booms and busts, what the role of the Fed is, and then in each case we talk about why this isn't just a coincidence. The Fed does one thing, and then another thing follows. This is exactly what you should expect, and we explain that when the Fed gets into the market and it's supposedly going to create growth for us, and thank goodness for the Fed, we can get growth for free. What the Fed will actually do is create a kind of sugar high for the economy where people will start to see their stock portfolios rise in price and value. They'll see their home prices rise. And so consumers are going to make a lot of erroneous decisions. They're going to think that they're richer than they really are. They're going to think these are real profits that they're enjoying, and they're going to buy bigger houses and better houses and go on crazy vacations and engage in conspicuous consumption. And then the whole thing comes crashing down, and all they've got to show for it is a whole lot of debt and, just complete devastation. That's exactly what happened in this case. And in Meltdown, I quote from previous business cycles like this from years and years ago, from the 20s, from earlier, and I just quote them, and you think this must be a description of the current crisis. But it goes to show that these crises are all so similar, they have features that are so similar, and the key factor that's the same in every one is the Fed was intervening in the economy, and yet everybody scratches his head and wonders, gee, I wonder why we have these booms and busts. I wonder what could be in common. What could all these things share in common? I don't know.
Right. Well, it's interesting to me that really you talk about, kind of this mass movement and the rabble getting interested in this subject. The only time I can think of in, my ignorance of American history, where you really had masses of people interested in something like monetary policy, they were just for free silver. In other words, or for free paper. They were for inflation, for an elastic currency, so that because they were debtors and they wanted to pay off their debts in dimes for dollars and all that. But they were just, picking one bad side of the boom and the bust system, basically. Whereas now the movement is really based on the understanding that they cause the boom and the bust, that those who seem to benefit from inflation end up suffering anyway. And so they're not calling for inflation. They're calling for an end to the entire process of boom and bust inflation. And so it's a giant leap forward. Anyway, Tom Woods, we'll be right back after this. All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. I'm Scott Horton. ScottHorton.org is the website. Keep all my interview archives there. I'm talking with Thomas E. Woods, Jr. TomWoods.com is his website. He's the author of the books Rollback, The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History, Meltdown. We're talking about the movie version of that. Hang on one second. Also, he wrote Nullification, 33 Questions You're Not Supposed to Ask About American History. He co-edited We Who Dared Say No to War with Murray Polner. That book is so important. I urge you to get that. I urge you to give that to people. Get lots of them and pass them around. And also, Who Killed the Constitution? The Fate of American Liberty from World War I to George W. Bush. And, So, like I say, we're talking about the movie version of the book Meltdown, so to speak. Interviews, mostly, I guess, telling the story from the very, very, very free market Austrian school perspective of what caused the distortion in the market that led to the terrible collapse. Is it really right, Tom, that 1/2 of the paper wealth on Earth was destroyed in the collapse of 2008?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know it's some huge amount. I don't know what the exact amount is. I don't know if we can even measure it. But it goes to show that what the Austrians were saying, that a lot of this prosperity is really false, and eventually these prices are going to readjust, and you're going to realize that the profits that you thought you were realizing are not, that they don't in fact exist. Well, they were absolutely right on. And let me note also that it won't just be a series of talking heads one after the other. There's actually we've got some pretty good animation in the works to show, because, I mean, the average person doesn't really want to know the Austrian theory of the business cycle. Let's be honest. I mean, even though they should want to know it, and once they do know it, they realize they wanted to know it all along. But it's hard to persuade them from the start. This is something you're going to want to sit down and watch, so we need to make this as accessible as possible. So we actually have some pretty good animators on the team who are going to make this, be able to illustrate these sort of complicated points so that the average person just gets it and is just practically compelled to accept it.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. It's very easy to understand, really. I mean, the way I like to put it is just, you know how the economy sometimes is doing really good, and then other times, it seems like the economy's doing really bad, and then it just goes back and forth all the time like that. And well, why is it like that? And they teach us in 7th grade social studies that, well, laissez-faire free market capitalism causes all our problems, and so that's why we all need new deals all the time to solve it and whatever. Is that really true, or maybe we need to turn that upside down?
Yeah, well, we completely need to turn it upside down. That what Mises showed 100 years ago, Ludwig von Mises, the economist, showed 100 years ago in his book, A Theory of Money and Credit, was he showed the connection between central banking, or it's mainly just creating credit out of thin air, and what effects that has on an economy. And basically the thing is that problem with the monetary system we have now, which is the exact opposite of a free market. I mean, the monetary system we have now is just shot through with monopoly privileges, bailout guarantees to major firms. The whole point of the Federal Reserve is to prop up the major financial institutions. That's why it's there. So it's not like some anomaly that it's trying to prop them up. That's why it's there. And the problem with the money we have now, I mean, there are many problems with it. But one problem that's overlooked is that, unlike everything else in the economy, the current monetary system, the creation of money, is not regulated by profit. Can't be regulated by profit. What I mean is, you think about people's eyeglasses, books, headphones, desks. Those things are regulated by profit and loss. You don't keep producing desks, until the world is just choking with all the desks. Eventually, you'd stop making profits because you're producing too many desks. It can be regulated by profit and loss. Eventually you realize you've got to produce something other than desks. Not true with fiat paper money, because it's always profitable to produce more. There's never a time when you would say it's no longer profitable for me to produce more, because it costs basically zero to produce it. And so it can't, unlike every other good in the economy, it cannot be regulated by profit and loss. What the Austrians ultimately want to see is a total separation of money and state, so that money is produced the same way hats and shoes and whatever are produced, and so it would be regulated by profit, and there would not be profit in just continuously producing and producing and producing. Eventually the rate of return is greater in some other industry. So what we have now, unfortunately, is a system that is complicated enough that the average person just won't understand it. But what they will think they understand is that it's a creation of the free market, or that when everything goes haywire, this must be the free market's fault, instead of thinking, no, it's actually the fault of all these monopoly institutions, starting with the Fed at the top, that most people don't understand or even know about, intervening in the economy and getting us on this sugar high time and again. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, before I brought you on, I played the short clip, it's the short version, I guess, of Murray Rothbard saying inflation is like heroin. And how come if they inflate the bubble, it doesn't just crash the first day? And he says, well, because they just keep inflating and inflating and inflating, just like a junkie just keeps shooting up more and more and more heroin until eventually it doesn't get him high anymore. And then now he hasn't had real nutrition in a long time. And so now the longer he does the heroin before kicking, the harder he's got to fall when he finally does kick.
Exactly. And then, of course, with inflation, people come to expect the inflation if you keep doing it. And so they factor inflation expectations into their various decisions. So if you want to use monetary policy to make them do certain things, then you're going to have to surprise them with inflation. You're going to have to inflate more than they anticipated. And then they'll start anticipating that degree of inflation. So then you'll have to inflate even more. So it really is, the analogy with a drug addict is quite apt.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I remember, Jon Stewart from The Daily Show interviewing Alan Greenspan, and he says, well, every time, I think this is before the crash, too, he says, every time that you crank down the interest rate in order to prop up Wall Street. That's good. You want to keep those stock prices high. And Greenspan says, yeah. And he says, but doesn't that punish grandma who's not really a savvy investor and can't really flip houses and invest in stock market stuff other than just a mutual fund or something like that? She is being punished just for trying to keep her money in a savings account down at the local thrift, right? And Greenspan says, well, yes, the price is worth it, or something like that,
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, the old U.S. government line. The price, we devastate people, but we, those who are not being devastated, think the price is worth it.
Yeah. But you can tell he hadn't even been confronted with that argument, really, at least very often anyway, and so he had to kind of, geez, I guess I admit that that's true if you put that to me, because I don't know what else
exactly,
to say.
But very revealingly, it had never occurred to me to think of it before.
Right.
But again, there's this very unfortunate, willingness, maybe on the part of the left in particular, to think in terms of the Fed as being just not really necessarily knowing a lot about it, but just assuming that it must be there for our own good because that's the way they think of all regulatory institutions. It's just there for our own good, and it never occurs to them that it might actually be causing problems, and even be causing problems for the most vulnerable people. I mean, remember, before you had the Fed, and before the dollar began to decline as it did under the Fed, people used to be able to save for the future by just literally accumulating cash. And then when they retired, if retirement was even possible in those days, they had a nest egg. Today, you would be a complete moron to just pile up some cash and expect to be able to live in your old age off that cash, because the Fed will make sure it loses 2/3 of its value by the time you get there. Now, who is harmed most by that? The people who need that money for necessities. Who would those people be? The poorest people in society. Now, why is this totally overlooked? I mean, I could at least understand if somebody would say, well, yeah, that is a negative thing, but at least the Fed provides stability, so at least there's a balance, the pro and con. But there's no acknowledgement of this problem at all. It forces these average people just to break even to go into the financial markets and buy stocks or go into mutual funds or whatever.
Sure. Well, and if they're trying to save up to open a business, they can't take out a loan, because they don't have the credit. You have to already be somebody to get a big enough loan to make a real business, and they can't save for it. All right, I'm sorry. We're interrupted by the hard breaks here. That's how this show goes. It's Tom Woods, author of most of the books that have ever been written. Check out his great website, tomwoods.com. We'll be right back after this. All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. I'm Scott Horton. The website is scotthorton.org. And I'm talking with Tom Woods. TomWoods.com is his website. Check out the blog and all his books and all his great stuff there. Especially subject to what we're talking about here. The book is Meltdown, a free market look at why the stock market collapsed, the economy tanked, and government bailouts will make things worse. And then thebubblemovie.com is the website for the Bubble movie. That's coming out in October. And as Tom was saying earlier in the show, if you just Google Bubble movie, Tom Woods, something like that, and you'll pull up the trailer there at YouTube. But you'll see in the right-hand margin, or at the end of the thing, links to the complete footage, the raw footage of the interviews of, at least I saw Doug Casey and Peter Schiff on there. Are all the raw interviews posted now, Tom?
I believe so, but if not, any remaining ones should be posted within a matter of days. Okay, right on. I'm not saying that I saw that they weren't. I'm just saying the ones I did see. Yeah, as far as I know, they're all up, which is and to be honest with you, there are a couple that I haven't seen yet myself, because he did. It was Jimmy Morrison, our director, did the interviews. He did such a great job, and then he would write to me and say, "What questions do you want me to ask these people?" And I'd think, this is just great. These are questions I'd love to get the experts to answer me on, and now I'm forcing them to do it because they've consented to this interview. So it was great. Great opportunity. Well, and I think this movie is a great opportunity to turn a lot of liberals into libertarians, too. I mean, it can cause a lot of frustration and cognitive dissonance and all these kinds of things to get over the hump, but I personally have seen a lot of liberals get it.
where they go from believing that, as you said, just sort of taking it for granted that somehow all this comes from an era long ago when the government actually did things in the people's interest. But nope, it never was like that, and it was the Morgan men who created, primarily, and in alliance with the Rockefellers too, who created the Federal Reserve, and they did it for them at the rest of everybody's expense, and then they lied us into World War I. It's all the very men who were in charge of the thing in the first place, and the whole point of it was to wage war against the rest of us. The whole point of it was to steal from the rest of us, and it always was that way. And this is the part that's the harder pill to swallow. It's the same story pretty much with the rest of the regulatory state. You can find heroic examples, I guess, of a regulator stopping a corporation from victimizing people, but it's hardly the standard. It's much more the other way around, protecting the the corporations from the rigors of the marketplace and, plain old liability in the courts and that kind of thing.
Well, one of the points that I make in Meltdown is that, normally, I make this point about the left sort of implicitly, but normally the left is highly skeptical when one particular interest group agitates, and all of us are skeptical, one interest group agitates for a particular law. We sort of figure, well, this law, therefore, must benefit this interest group. We don't assume this interest group must be devoting all its resources just to pursuing the common good. Like, no one thinks that.
At the expense of themselves, even.
Yeah, at their own expense, because they just are so selfless. So then if the Federal Reserve is an example of big bankers getting together selflessly because they just care so much about the common good, it would be the first time in history that would be the case. So you're right. But another thing about persuading people is that the problem is that by default we lose these debates because our side doesn't make documentaries. Or we do, but, one for every 100 made by the other side. So we want to get our point of view out there so that it's not just this or that very, very conventional view that I could predict every word they're going to say, but give people the other side, because you're right, there are plenty of people who are uncommitted on this. I mean, most people don't know anything about this one way or the other. Let them look at both sides, and yeah, I guarantee you they will find our side of the story very compelling.
Yeah, for sure. As Geodor Griffin put it in Jekyll Island, the name of the game is bailout for the government and for the banks. You guys promise to buy our bonds forever, and we'll give you a license to expand your bank credit forever, and everyone else be damned.
Yeah, exactly, and then we'll throw $10 for free school breakfasts at people, yeah. And that'll shut the left up.
Right.
That's pathetic. That's pathetic.
It'll be great. All right. Well, now, so speaking of the history, the real history behind some things, let's talk about the Liberty Classroom. I've posted a banner ad up at the top of scotthorton.org for my part in your great affiliate program here. So let's see, we got about 6 minutes. Please tell us all about the different sections, and this is a gigantic project and something that looks really special here that you have going, Tom. And then tell them about the great affiliate project too.
All right, so here's the gist of it. So this is my new project. It's what I've been working on. It took me like a year to put it together. But I thought to myself, it really enrages me that people, we're all frustrated that in school we all learn, like a propaganda version of U.S. history and a lot of flag waving and benevolent presidents' faces looking down at us from the wall, and it's the party line that we basically get, and we get it in the universities. And either there or it's a left-wing line or it's an establishment line or whatever. But it's totally unsatisfying, and it leaves out a whole lot of stuff, and it distorts a whole lot of other stuff. So I thought, I've been spending a lot of my time griping about this, but surely there is something more useful that I can contribute to mankind than griping about this. How about I actually do something? Well, there's an idea. Do something. So, hey, look, I got the Internet. I got a super high-quality camcorder. I got everything I need. I'm just going to teach U.S. history. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to solve this problem by I don't have to try to reform the faculty of Cornell University. I don't have any ability to do that. But I can go right over their heads with the Internet. So that's what LibertyClassroom.com is, where I and a few other people I trust got together and taught all of U.S. history from the colonial period to the present, all of Western civilization, from the ancient Near Eastern origins like Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, Greece and Rome, all the way up through the 20th century, the World Wars, the European Union, all of that stuff. And then Austrian economics. I got a professor who appeared on one of Ron Paul's committees, and I said committee meeting hearings, and I said, I want you to teach Austrian economics from start to finish. I want the whole overview. And so that's what we get. So we got all this stuff, plus I've got other stuff I'm going to add. And the idea of it is you can just download it. You don't have to sit in front of your computer screen. You don't have to wait till 5 p.m. when we come on. No, it's just sitting there waiting for you to download. You can not feel like you're wasting your commute anymore. You can be learning. And then if you have a question about it, we got discussion forums. Ask us anything you want, anytime you want. We have a live session every month where you can ask us questions in real time. We have recommended readings for every single topic and all these hundreds of lectures. Every single one has, so you don't have to do hit and miss, what book can I rely on? It's all there. And all kinds of resources. We've got a great community there in our forums. And then we also have an affiliate program. Whether you join the site or not, you can be part of our affiliate program, which means that if you put a link up to our site or you talk about it on your blog or you put it on Facebook or Twitter and somebody clicks on it and joins, you get $30, and you get $30 every single time this happens. So help out Scott Horton, who we want to keep on the air. Go to scotthorton.org, click on the link there, and you'll help out Scott while also getting what I think is an absolute steal in terms of the sheer amount of material you're getting.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, that affiliate program, it's great for me, and I agree with you that people should go to scotthorton.org and click on the banner ad there to get to libertyclassroom.com. But, hell, I encourage everybody to go ahead and join up the affiliate program and do it themselves, too. Nobody gets paid unless somebody goes to the actual classroom, but I'm looking at this thing, and it looks pretty impressive. And so talk to us about prices so that people can really decide whether they think they want to put the money into something like this or not.
Well, I was thinking in terms of there's a company used to be called the Teaching Company, and they would sell courses. Mm-hmm. And they would sell it'd be like $50 a course, $100 a course. So my site is $99 a year. But for that, you get the equivalent of 5 courses, basically, when you look at all the lectures. Mm-hmm. Plus, I'm going to be adding 2 or 3 more before the end of this subscription year. And plus, you get complete year-long access to us if you have some question or your professor is giving you some propaganda or there's some article you don't know how to refute or your friend is on your case. You can come right to us, and we'll answer it and help you. So I don't think there is any bargain anywhere like that, anywhere online or offline, where you got reliable people, not propagandists, but reliable people who will answer your questions and teach you stuff like this for a full year.
Yeah. Well, and this has got to be worth it. I mean, look at these classes. Austrian economics step by step, U.S. history to 1877, U.S. history since 1877, Western civilization to 1500, Western civilization since 1500, and then I'm missing one too, aren't I? Nope, that was it. Still,
well, we got more stuff coming. It's going to be
more
great.
Coming too. That's Tom Wood's Liberty Classroom, the history and economics they didn't teach you. Go to scotthorton.org and click the banner ad there. Go to libertyclassroom.com and also check out the Bubble movie. It's coming out soon. The trailer's available on YouTube there and at tomwoods.com. Thanks very much, Tom.
Thanks, Scott.
Appreciate it.